Hey, y'all. I want to talk to you today. In fact, we're going to talk about this over the next couple of weeks, and that's the understanding of how we deal with conflict. And so today we're looking at the churchism of conflict and how it impacts church. A lot of times we think about conflict in the church and and we react in the same way that anyone in the world would react. And when that happens, it does irreparable harm not only to relationships within the church, but the reputation of the Lord and the church within the community. Now, a couple of things because we're going to look at this over 2 weeks. First of all, I just want to give you some overall generalities about conflict. And then next week, we're going to look at some biblical principles. Because remember, a churchism is about things about church that we believe that are usually not true or maybe only part true. And so this one deals with the fact that, if somebody hurts us, we'll just hurt them back. If somebody gossips about us, we'll gossip with them or about them. And consequently, what ends up happening is that life within the church doesn't look that much different than life outside the church. And that's not the way it's supposed to be. We're supposed to be light in the darkness. And so I want to give you some principles or some generalities about conflict. And that's the first thing is that conflict will happen. It's going to happen. We live in a world where you put two people in a room, eventually there's going to be conflict. And then the church, you put, dozens or scores or hundreds or even thousands of people in a group, there's going to be conflict. It will happen. It's just part of the way that we are. It's part of the fact that we are sinners and we live in a sinful world. And so we're called to live lives that are different, especially within the church. How do we handle that? Well, we'll talk more about that next week. But I will tell you this, that the fact that we're hurting does not justify misconduct. The fact that we're hurting does not justify hurting other people. We need to understand that if we're called to Christianity, we're called to a life of pain. Jesus told us that in this life we will have that. That in this life there will be hardships and difficulties and oppressions and pain. And that's part of the life of a Christian. That we're called to suffering for Christ's sake. A Christianity without suffering is shallow indeed. Now we see that one of the things that really makes a difference when we look at the conflict that was recorded in Acts chapter 6, where there was a conflict over the widows in the church, and that conflict literally it could have split the church wide open. But what makes the difference is leadership. The leadership of the church in Acts 6 made the difference. And the leadership of the church did the right thing. They turned the focus of the church back to the Lord. They didn't focus on the problem. They didn't focus on the hurt feelings. They focused on the Lord. Leadership makes all the difference. And that's why it's important to have godly leaders within the church. It's not just the guy who's been there the longest. It's someone who's a godly leader, someone who loves the Lord and is walking with the Lord, who's growing in the Lord, who's sharing their faith in the Lord with others. That's the person you want leading and giving the example to the rest of the church. And then finally, we've got to ask the question, who are you serving? Are you serving yourself? If that's the case, then you know what? If they hurt me, then I'm going to hurt them back worse. I'm going to give as good as I get. In practice, I'm going to give worse. That's the motto of the person who's serving themselves. Are you serving others? That means you don't want to look bad in front of others. You don't want to lose face. You don't want to be humbled. Then once again, that justifies doing pretty much whatever you want to do to make sure that you don't, no one gets one over on you. Or are you serving the Lord? If you're serving the Lord, then you're called to turn the other cheek, to go the extra mile, to give your coat and your cloak also. You're called to love those who hate you, to bless those who curse you, to pray for those who despitefully use you, to understand that even if you're suffering in this world, that there's so much more that God has for you that's greater and bigger and higher and more important. You see, conflict will happen, but how you deal with it really is an indicator of what you believe. And in the next time, we're going to talk about Jesus' specific teaching on how we can deal with conflict in a biblical way. Look, I wish I could tell you it'll never happen. I can't. That would be a lie. But I can tell you that in the midst of your hurt, you can either choose to handle it in a sinful way or in a way that brings glory to God as you do. Trust the Lord, even in the midst of conflict. God bless you.